Welcome to episode 2 of the Modern Adolescent podcast. I'm so sorry it took this long to get episode 2 out. I was not expecting this much of a break after my first episode, but I'm really hoping that doesn't happen again and we can get on a more consistent schedule. But yeah, thank you so much for at least sticking with me for that. Again, thank you guys so much for the reception of the first episode. I got tons of DMs from you guys, tons of texts. You guys are so nice. So yeah, thank you guys for that. Again, like I said, I'm hopefully trying to get on a bi-weekly schedule. Obviously, I took 2 months off, so that's not a bi-weekly schedule. But hopefully after today, I can get on a more regular schedule and I can get these episodes actually cranked out and actually maybe inform someone, I'm also on a new setup today, camera-wise. I have different lighting. I'm in a slightly different spot. So I can't really tell right now. My vision isn't that great, so I can't really tell right now how in focus I am or how the lighting is totally. Hopefully I can fix most of it in post, but obviously this is a podcast, so technically you can just listen to it, Speaking of listening to it, I will again have the Google Drive link in my bio for this video, and hopefully, when this goes up, episode 1 and episode 2 should either be getting approved by iTunes or approved by iTunes. So if it does end up on iTunes after the fact of this episode, I will periodically update the description box and it will be there once it is up. So today's episode is focusing on a little broader of a topic. It's pressure to perform in high school. So that is with grades, with extracurriculars, really just trying to be the perfect student. And kind of just the pressure that I feel all of us are put under to kind of meet that demand. Now more than ever, I'm a rising senior currently, and with college apps coming up, SATs, everything like that, I am forced to look back on my high school career and what I could have done or what I should have done. And definitely I am feeling the consequences of this kind of pressure to perform throughout high school. And I think it's a really, really important topic that needs to get talked about more, because kids are constantly being put under this impossible stress that really they can't handle. Like, it's unhuman, the amount of pressure that high schoolers are being put under, especially in 2021. Now, I would say now in 2021, there really isn't a student at any high school that isn't feeling some sort of insane academic pressure. With social media being connected, everyone is kind of aware of what everyone else is doing, and whether that be on, your personal private stories or Instagram, anything like that, or whether it be on, TikTok, YouTube, with people who you don't even know, sharing their academic achievements, academic things, what have you. There is absolutely this pressure on kids to be the best person possible at all times, get the perfect grades, do the perfect extracurriculars, have all the leadership positions, and kind of set yourself up to be this perfect college applicant, which no one is naturally a perfect college applicant. It's kind of the standard they were putting kids under that is kind of forcing them into this box that maybe they don't really want to be in. So I go to what I would call a fairly high-achieving high school, normally really high test scores, a lot of student participation. A lot of people end up going to pretty high-ranking or prestigious universities after their stay at my high school. Even if it is public, I kind of do feel kind of like there is that sort of prestige pressure that is put on us as students. And as soon as I entered my freshman year, I really did feel kind of this shift to perfection that I think a lot of students, whether or not you go to my high school or not, do feel. Personally for me, it was a switch from kind of a number grading system. There weren't really like pressure to get like the equivalent of A's, it wasn't really ranked like that, to being put onto a number grade system and like learning what a GPA was and all of this other stuff. And I think it was kind of a hard transition, and it was like that. It was like that where like school didn't become this thing that you went to, it became this thing that like you achieved. and you were like always working at. And that was definitely a hard shift to be in. And I think getting kind of thrust into that environment really does a lot on a person's mental health. And I'll say it did a lot on my mental health. Never in my life had I really been in a situation where I'm not a great student. I'm not a bad student, I would say. I'm kind of just in the middle. I take honors classes. I take some AP classes, really not a lot. I'm kind of just there and chill. And I was really thrusted into this situation where I was comparing myself to other people in grades, and a lot of students were sharing grades and comparing grades, and a lot of people who were a lot smarter than me were sharing their grades with me, and I felt like, oh, I'm a failure. I didn't get this grade. I'm not that type of student. I wouldn't have probably gotten that grade, but it was the fact that other people were, and I don't know, I wanted to live up to this kind of perfection that made me feel kind of inferior. And I feel like we put everything in high school towards a number on a 4 or 5 point scale. And that really isn't what living's about. You know, high school is just kind of 4 years of your life. It isn't everything in your life. So I think kind of being put in that environment where it felt like it was everything, a grade was absolutely everything, a test was absolutely everything, was very detrimental. And I think a lot of people are put in that same environment where you are constantly comparing yourself to your peers, and you always want to get perfect grades, and you're sacrificing your mental health for that. And even besides that kind of personal pressure, a lot of people do have the pressure from people at home, like parents and stuff like that, kind of fueling them throughout high school. And definitely I feel like that is something, parental pressure exactly is something that really does do a number on a lot of high school students. And personally, I would say I'm pretty lucky to have a fairly supportive family when it comes to grades. It's not, grades aren't really the end all be all, but a lot of people are in the situation where grades are their end all be all, and feeling as though you're just maybe letting yourself down, but now you're letting down, the rest of your family, is definitely something that really does take a toll on kids. And having, again, that rapid shift in high school, no one's really prepared to undergo kind of how taxing that can be. On top of like how taxing it is, constantly feeling like you have to do perfect and get perfect grades, and get your GPA as high as possible. Also feeling as though you have to be this well-rounded student, you have to be a perfect applicant, is definitely something that I felt getting stressed to me as soon as I got into high school. When I got into high school, I was kind of bombarded with these type A kind of students that were really, really involved in a lot of things, and I was like, that's what I need to do. And I think it gets stressed to us a lot in high school to be as involved as possible as you can, to do as many clubs as you can, as many sports as you can, all that you can do in high school, really make the most of your years, which is a totally fine thing to do. But I think a lot of us sacrifice quality for quantity. You can do as many clubs as sports as possible and try to kind of build up what you're doing, but if you're sacrificing your mental health along the way, is it worth it, And I think having that pressure to be that kind of perfect college applicant throughout high school does a lot on kids in terms of, having them participate in things that maybe they don't want to participate in, or kind of flooding their schedule with a lot of stuff that maybe isn't exactly what they want to be doing, but they feel like it makes them look good on paper. And spending your time doing things that you genuinely don't care about is a terrible way to spend your time, and that's really going to diminish your mental health. And in high school, I feel like I kind of fell into the same trap. I felt like I had to be busy all the time. I had to be involved in whatever I could get involved in, and I was doing things that I felt made me look good on paper, and it just wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing. And that's kind of where my mental health suffered, was prioritizing things that I didn't like. And that really did take a toll on me. And I found after, whittling down my schedule and actually focusing on things that I enjoy, there was a rapid spike in my mental health. And, whether that looks better on paper, I don't know, but I know for sure that I'm doing everything to the best of my ability and to the highest level that I can be doing it. So we actually have one of our first guests of the Modern Adolescent podcast this week. I interviewed Hanna Weldai, who is one of my dearest friends, kind of about the subject of feeling as though you have to do everything in high school and really straining yourself to be this perfect student, and kind of the tolls that can have. So I am here with my friend Hanna Weldai. Hanna is, I would believe, the pinnacle of being involved in high school. I mean, you do literally everything. Miss Class President, Miss Varsity Athlete, Miss Club Participator, Officer. I don't know your exact positions in your clubs, but Hanna does a lot of things, and I'm so happy that she's on the podcast today and we can have a little chat. So hi, Hanna.
Hi, Caitlin. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay!
Those of you watching, if Miss Trombley's watching, hey. Caitlin came to me in bio and was like, I'm doing this podcast, would you want to be on it? And I was so honored. I was like,
you're like, yay.
Yay. I love talking, and especially about a subject like this, I'm really excited to talk about it. So, yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm so happy. Okay. So when you came into high school, I feel like I was kind of bombarded by this expectation of perfection. Did you feel like you kind of got bombarded by that expectation?
Yes. Oh, goodness. If anyone says no, you're probably lying. Especially I had an older sister who was a senior. I do everything that she did, but better. No, I'm kidding. But, yeah, just kind of coming into high school, I was ready for a fresh start. Being in an environment that's so much bigger and better and brighter. But, people already knew me and things like that, and I was in all these classes with all my friends, but I still wanted to strive to be the greatest version of myself. And yeah, I definitely felt that coming into high school, especially when you're kind of at the bottom of the food chain in terms of your age and everything. It can be really overwhelming, and I'm sure a lot of people felt that too.
So I know that when I got to high school, it was an almost immediate the grade culture shifted almost immediately when I got there. Do you have I can remember a specific time where it kind of switched for me. It was definitely freshman year bio and freshman year math. Really just I didn't realize that kids compared themselves as much as they did. Do you have an experience where you kind of realize, oh my God, I'm comparing myself so much to other people, or this is kind of a rough environment?
I think that it definitely got heightened in high school, but I feel that kind of thing hit kind of in middle school, if I'm being honest. Sherwood, I remember I always strive to get 4s or 3.5s, those numbers systems or whatever. And I'm trying to think. I have this really specific example. I got a 2.5 on a history test in 6th grade. It was about World War I. And I was talking to my friend and was like, oh yeah, I got a 4. And I was like, how could I ever get a 2.5 on something like a history test? Because especially me, I'm so math and science oriented. So I was how could I felt such a failure. I felt it was the end of the world. And then when I got to high school and things were so much harder, and we actually had letter grades now, and I wouldn't get the grades that I wanted, I was oh goodness gracious, it's gonna be a long haul, definitely.
Yeah. So in high school, there's kind of this idea that I feel gets pushed on everyone that's you need to be this well-rounded student, perfect well-rounded student. Do you feel as though there's more pressure to be this perfect well-rounded student, or to have perfect grades?
I think that those two kind of go hand in hand. I think that to be a perfect well-rounded student, you have to have perfect grades in every class. Say you want to be an engineer when you grow up, you still have to get that A+ in your English class, or a foreign language. I think that a lot of people view being well-rounded in your grades as oh, this person can do everything and therefore they can be the best at everything as well. And then I've definitely kind of felt that way too. If I didn't do so well in math, I'd be oh my God, what am I doing? Everything is going horribly, what am I doing? So I definitely think that those two coincide with each other. In order to have one, you have to be the other, or in order to be one, you have to have the other. So I think they both go together.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I feel like a lot of the time, at least in our high school, there's a lot of people who are really striving to be that like perfect, well-rounded student. Like there's a lot of pressure. And I can speak for myself. This is going to be a little story time. I can speak to myself. I played a particular sport in high school. And I spent a lot of time on that sport, if that makes any sense. And I really started playing it just because I felt like I needed to do a high school sport. Like I felt like there's no like in order to have, like a happy high school career or like to have a fulfilling high school career, like you need to play a sport, you need to be in all these clubs, you need to do all this stuff. And I played the sport for, 2 years, and I didn't really like the person I became while playing it. I was a lot more stressed. I was doing this a lot. I just didn't really like the person I became. And it wasn't until I mean, I technically quit the sport twice, but it wasn't until I kind of quit the club section of the sport and then the school section of the sport that I kind of realized, this was kind of not where I needed to be, and everything kind of grew. Do you think kind of in that term, do you think like kids are kind of neglecting, stuff that they actually like or like are passionate about, or they're like kind of just their own well-being just for this like idea of what like a perfect student in high school is?
Yes, 100%. 100%, definitely. I think that, especially in your situation, like, I applaud you for understanding when, like, it's the right time to stop doing something, because I know that sometimes I do things that aren't necessarily like good for me or good for my mental health, but I keep doing them anyway because, like, it's I'm already committed, or like I've been doing it for so long. But I want everybody who's watching to understand that, like, it's important to say no, or to respect, like, or create boundaries for yourself as well. Like, there are so many instances, say in like class officers, where I want to take every single job and just pile all of, not necessarily the burdens, but just all of the tasks on me. But then I get overwhelmed and I get stressed, and it's like nobody's helping me. But it's important for me and for everybody else to be able to just say no to things, or to just, ask for help. But yeah, there definitely is a drive for a lot of students, and I can definitely attest to this, to be that perfect person, especially doing things that you might not find yourself happy in. But it's kind of like, well, what's the person next to me doing? What's like the competition like? What do I have to do to kind of be the best at something, even though it's kind of damaging to who you are and your mental health and everything like that?
Yeah, so kind of just going off of this like this kind of culture that we've like been talking about, like what do you think is kind of, is there even like a solution or like at least like a conversation that needs to be started about, you know, kind of this competition between students and the pressure to kind of be perfect when that's not necessarily like the most beneficial to the student, and also might it's not in the student's best interest for like what they're passionate about or like what's going to make them successful in life.
I think that people, especially students, have to take in maybe constructive criticism as well. I think that there are a lot of resources, maybe like your guidance counselor or your teacher, and I think it's really easy for people to think that they know what's best for them, but it's also, I think, really important to get that kind of outside look, or like an outside perspective, because I think that a lot of people are just trapped inside their own bubble and they think they know what's best for them, like I said. But I think that the conversation, it's so difficult, especially with high school students, because we've kind of matured past a point of, like following the herd, or not necessarily following the herd, but like when we're younger, we're just told what to do and we're expected to do things when we grow up. But I think that that conversation has to start maybe a little bit earlier. It never hurts anybody to just say, like, oh, maybe it's time to take a step back or just focus on yourself. I think that, especially in our youth, mental health isn't something that's necessarily talked about, because we're all kind of like happy-go-lucky, bubbly kids. But as we grow older, we kind of diminish that side of ourselves in a strive for perfection. So I think that listening to other people when they talk, or just expressing your own concerns as well. It doesn't have to start with somebody being like, hey, how do you feel about this, this, and this? You can be the one to gauge that conversation. Just be like, this is what I've noticed in my school, in my classroom, in like my own like brain, or in my own environment, and just be like, this is what I want to change. And it all starts with you. Like, you can take action as well, and hopefully and probably people will follow as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that conversation, kind of just like to take a step back, that conversation is kind of something that like a lot of us are neglecting. Like, I feel like when you're in high school, you're like kind of everyone is in like the same boat of like stressors and like this kind of pressure that we're talking about. And you're kind of chatting with each other. You're like, oh, I'm so stressed about this, and this. And they're like, relatable. And like, they're like, yeah, I'm like stressed out about this, and this. And you're kind of complaining together. But it's not really like, I feel like not a lot of people take that step back and be like, wait, like this is unhealthy or like stuff like that. I feel like it's just a collective, like, ugh, we have to do this, if that makes any sense.
Or nobody's actually kind of like, wait, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing those things? Should you be doing those things? And I also like to kind of piggyback off of that. I think it's important, especially when you're talking to friends or just like classmates, not to invalidate their stressors or experiences. Because say someone's like in a higher level class than you are, or like, you know, like honors A level, or they're taking an AP class, you're taking none, things like that.
Yeah.
If someone's like, oh, I'm stressed about and this, and you're like, well, I'm stressed about this, or I do these things, it 100% invalidates their experience, and it makes people feel, especially I know that I've been in a situation like this, it makes you feel as though that your struggles aren't as important, which is 100% not true. It's not true at all. Everybody is living their own separate life, even though we're all in like this collective bubble that is Shrewsbury High School. So when you're listening to people, just open up your ears. You know, it's a tough pill to swallow, but, you know, like, sometimes not everything is about you, and you have to actually, you know, maybe take that step back from yourself and just lend a hand to another person, and hopefully in return they do the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with people when I've been like insanely stressed out and like they've been talking to me, or like just someone in general who has been maybe in a higher level position, or like doing something that like a higher level class, higher level position, or just something different in their life, and that makes any sense, and they're complaining about their struggles, but then in my head I'm like, you're doing this and this, like you're more successful already, that kind of stuff, and it kind of makes me feel like, oh, like I shouldn't be stressed about this if they can handle that. And I think it's important to realize, you know, everyone is different, and your feelings are completely valid no matter what you're doing. It can seem like the most trivial thing to you in comparison, but if it's affecting you, it's affecting you.
Yes, exactly. 100%. I agree.
Oh my gosh. Yay. Okay. Is there any, I don't know what else to ask. Those are all the questions. Are there any like final thoughts that you have kind of about this like struggle for perfection in high school? Anything else that you want to say about kind of like what's really going on?
Yeah. I think that in something I've realized just by like taking a step back and kind of talking to people outside the Shrewsbury bubble, like, this is a competitive school. I think that with our level of education and, you know, the resources we have, the facility that we have, how big the school is, it is so incredibly easy to just fall down a rabbit hole of striving to be the best version of yourself. And I think that it is so incredibly hard, especially in young teens, whether you're a boy or a girl, that you want to compare yourself to other people, but everyone's version of success is defined in their own measure. You know, I find success just by, like, cleaning the floor of my room, which is really dirty. And other people might have, like, a perfect room or something like that. But just, I think, focus on the little things. Like, if you get a good grade, something better than what you got before, but it's not, like, 100% or an A, celebrate those things. It's so amazing. And I think that especially when you grow up, especially in our grade, like junior, senior, things like that, people are always competing with each other and always striving to be a better version of themselves compared to other people. But I think if that we all just kind of take a step back, reanalyze our situation, what we're going through, how weird this year has been, and how good of a job we're all doing in our own respect, then I think a lot can come from that. A lot of good things can come from that.
Yay! Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. Yay, our first guest. Again, thank you so much to Hannah for participating in this episode today. I feel like that we had a great conversation kind of about what it means to be involved in high school and kind of this pressure that we're kind of put under to be these perfect applicants and perfect students. And I want to end on kind of one more note, which is kind of something I feel is really important for a lot of people to hear, and that it's okay to quit and it's okay to take time for yourself. Especially with kind of feeling as though you have to do every single extracurricular or be in every single leadership position or do all of this stuff with perfect grades. I feel as though it is important to reiterate and to say, spend your time doing what you want to do. Even if you're worried about your application or being this perfect person, what you like will shine through, and it's okay to stop doing something because it's detrimental to you. Always put your mental health first when it comes to choosing what you're spending your time with, and if it's doing anything detrimental to you, feel free to have that conversation with yourself and be like, hey, this isn't working. I need to stop. And that is okay. Don't keep doing something that's going to dig you deeper into a hole that, you don't want to be in. So that is all for today's podcast. That's really all I have to say. Thank you again to Hannah for participating today. Again, I'm hoping to, get more consistent schedule later on. But I just wanted to thank you guys so much and have a great day.